Hi everybody, welcome to today's show. We've got special guest Fred Schebesta from finder.com, a comparison website that he started in 2006 and now operates in about 80 odd countries and employs 400 staff around the world. Fred recently raised around $30 million for the business at a valuation of around $600 million, and that put him in the Young Rich list category. Is doing extremely well and representing Australian tech entrepreneurs on a global level. It was fantastic to have him share his insights on business, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Firstly, thanks for coming on the show and taking the time, because I know you're really busy. To start with, I'll just get you to go through a little bit of your background, just real briefly, just to where you started from and how you got to where you are now. And one of the other questions I wanted to sort of allude to is, what made you go into business in the first place? Of all the things you can do in the world, why business?
Yeah, sure. So, I think I used to go out and climb trees and ride BMX bikes and skateboards and get into, set fire to things. And so I don't know if I was necessarily like, some prodigy entrepreneur or anything like that. I was always an explorer, but always curious.
Yeah.
And, always thinking of things, thinking of ideas. And, over time, I think what sort of occurred to me, I went through, obviously after school and after university, I just didn't really, I was a little bit different to other people. And I wasn't self-aware to realize this. I think it's just, looking backwards, the dots all make sense. Looking forwards, it's all a bit confusing. But, I just always was curious, right? And I got curious into the internet. And then I was like, well, now that we can do this, why don't we go and make some businesses on the internet? That'd be really cool. And that's really the genesis. It's been always, hey, here's a really wacky idea, let's go and try it. And I tend to be that person who goes and tries it with my own money and do something unusual. Get into cryptocurrency, get into NFTs, get into VPNs and all sorts of things. And I think that's in my nature, being curious, being creative, trying things, taking risks, and being responsible to see them through all the way. And that's what I do. I put my own money up, and and now we've got investors in Finder. It's our first, after 11 years, we have a seed fund, we've seed funded.
I saw that the last year, right?
Right. And that changes things a bit as well. But that's really where I started.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of sort of when you were younger, were you always going to be in business or creating something, like 10 years old, or was that something that you looked at and were that's I'm going to be in business, or was it something completely different?
I didn't really try and be in anything. I don't think I've ever come from that place, and probably accidentally fallen into that. I don't think I was actually a great business person, nor am I necessarily, I would say I am the greatest business person either. But what I am very good at is creating things and bringing them together. In the beginning in Finder, which actually used to be called Credit Card Finder, I used to actually, wrote the content. I used to build the links, do the SEO, get the deals with a partner, all of it. I did the whole thing. Do the tech upload of the files. I literally opened, Fireworks, not Photoshop. That shows anyone who's out there listening and they know Macromedia, and they'll know why I use Fireworks and not Photoshop. That's from the OG Web 1.0 days.
Yeah, sounds like.
And if you put me in a situation where no one knows what to do, where to go, and no one knows where the opportunities necessarily are, I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at finding the place, finding the location, and then bringing it together into the genesis of something that can be continued and scaled. And if you were to sort of boil that down, if a business life is from 0 to 10, you put me on the 0 to 1, and then very kindly ask me to leave.
Right. Okay. So that leads into my next question is what is your biggest strength in business, and how does it help you succeed? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in business, I guess. It could just be your biggest strength. That might be unrelated to business necessarily.
I think if I was to, try and look back, this is a tough question because, I don't know. It's probably better. Someone else would probably have a better idea than myself, but I think it would be something to do with I am prepared to do and answer a problem differently and back other people to take risks for their answers and their solutions, and back them and be prepared to deal with the consequences that happen, good or bad.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that I'm a product of other people. Not like I'm not a self-made man. I'm a catalyst to some extent of incredible people who have created absolute mastery around me. So I think that's one thing, attracting people who are passionate, people love. I think there are people who are attracted to work with me personally because I push the boundaries. I go to the edge and then keep going, and then I'm prepared to take risks and make investments and allocate capital to things which as you get bigger, it's just harder as an organization to do that. And the other thing is, I think, I have a lot of frailties as well. I'm not perfect. I'm actually perfect in my imperfect way, but in the most respectful thing is I'm super authentic about it. Like, like I'll say something dumb, but I'll be like, hey, I'm just genuinely trying to say this, but if I go back and I apologize, but if I say something really on point, people, they know that's coming from an authentic place. Always. It's always like that. And I think that builds a level of trust, not necessarily with myself, but for trust of people to be themselves and to challenge themselves and to put out different ideas and then back them all the way. And I think that's what creates the magic. Those moments in time when people choose, I'm going to choose the thing that's a little bit out there and then go and deliver it.
And they know that you're going to back them to do that. And so they are more comfortable making those sort of calls and those sorts of decisions.
All the way.
Right. The flip side of that is, what would you say your biggest weakness is, and how do you overcome it?
I am probably the most consistently inconsistent person. I would consider myself like a good 14% reliable.
Okay.
In terms of turning up to meetings and being on time, and I just I'm not that person. I'm not the details person. I need to leave that consistency to other people. But what I am consistent about is I am absolutely relentlessly going towards the goal, and people know that. Like I'm the one who's 24 hours on Slack. You don't like you could look at. It's probably a graph. It'd be fascinating to actually look at the times in which I'm sending messages to people all around the world. And I'm anecdotally known, like I am always there. Whether I'm like, like I've turned up to the thing or whatever it is, that's obviously by the by. And then, I think people have come to know that. But at the same time, they know that like I am feverishly and relentlessly going to persist and continue to step forward. And, we work at a really fast speed at Finder. We're going quick. And so, I guess in those moments of when, those weaknesses, they also have I've sort of learned to turn that into a bit of a strength, which is kind of interesting, is because I forget about things, I make sure that someone's in control and someone's, responsible. And essentially what it feels like to them is they have like complete autonomy, which is great, because when I forget the thing, they're like carrying on and they're actually really grateful because they get to drive and take those chances. And I guess I see myself more in that coach position. I think this is something where I just know I'm not the person who should be in the operations. I'm in the beginning, I'm in the start, and then it's really good, if you just kindly, it's good for me to not necessarily be as involved after that. Obviously,
sorry.
No, I think I can contribute in some ways, but operationally, that's not my best place.
Yeah, I read somewhere that you outsource a lot of things, even in terms of, at home and that sort of stuff. I read that in an article somewhere. Is that part of that sort of process of outsourcing everything?
Yeah, I don't go to supermarkets. I actually don't shop online. This is really weird, because I'm not actually purchasing the things, because I was just like, oh, where is it going to be delivered? Geez, I don't know where to send this. Where am I going to be? I don't know. I'm operating at an extraordinary speed, like light speed. And so, something like that, it's very hard to operate within other systems. And so I create systems almost, around myself in order to maximize that and not have to think about that. I wear black, and then on the other hand, I'll wear an extreme amount of color. There are my two options. I have, two gears, imagine in a car, like literally this one and that one, that's it. And so that allows me to remove all of these other micro decisions which can tie you in, and I just stay, and sometimes I don't think about anything as well. I just have blankness, which is really important as well, because you're preparing for your next idea that will, you're channeling and it's coming to you. You're waiting for that, and you need to make space for that, and you don't know when it's going to arrive. It's pretty extreme. I probably call it radical outsourcing.
I love that. It's very zen. Yeah. Okay. What was the best decision you ever made was, and why? In business.
I think probably the first, one I would definitely call out is the decision to partner along the way, particularly with my business partner Frank. That's probably one of the greatest choices. I don't think if Frank hasn't been, Frank has been with me, for 2003. So what's that? Almost 19 years.
Yeah, right.
That's probably the greatest thing one of the greatest decisions I ever made. And I made a couple of other good ones. I've made some really bad ones, but the good ones have tended to outweigh the bad ones so far. I'd say in terms of that, there would be no Fred without Frank. Let's put it that way. And he's really that consistent, reliable, continuous rock of stability that all the organizations that we're building and involved with need, and then they need that electricity, right, from myself. It's combined together. It's not just one thing. It's all good and well to have a toaster, but if it's unplugged from the wall, you ain't going to make much toast.
Yeah, you need both parts of the puzzle, right?
Yep.
Just on that, what would you say the biggest challenge you've ever faced in business would be?
I think there are moments in time where you don't know even the answer to how to begin to answer a problem.
Yeah, right.
The problem is so convoluted, complex, and in those moments, you can almost hit a point of overwhelm, and at a point where you can stare into the abyss a little bit. And I think obviously in those moments I tend to step up and try and locate and find people who can solve these things and work out ways around them. But I think the actual challenge, it's not so much the problem, because I think every problem has some sort of answer or some result attached to it. I think the underlying core thing is challenge is the resilience and ability to re-inspire yourself to persist and carry on.
Yeah.
And I'd say that those moments are the hardest moments, because if you stop, then there's obviously one answer what's going to happen. But if you can find a way to put one foot in front of the other and carry on, that's probably going to lead you to eventually an answer.
Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever been given? And what advice would you give to someone starting a business?
Starting a business, geez. I always hear this, it's something, I don't know where exactly this has come from, or I think I wrote about this in my book a bit as well, is it's about focus.
Yeah.
In the beginning. Absolute focus on one thing and making it great, truly great, 10 times better than whatever else is out there. Finding something unique, compelling. If you want to create a very long-term sustainable business, focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And I think in Finder, we did that in a large degree. We focused on credit cards. We focused on our content marketing, writing huge amounts of educational content about credit cards and serving, in this instance was Australians. And we just focused on that for 3 years straight. Imagine writing about credit cards for 3 years straight. Well, we've been writing about credit cards now for 11 years straight, right? But imagine, just think for a moment, if you had to write about credit cards for 3 years straight.
Yeah.
That's extreme. And then we continued on and kept on writing about them. Like, that's an extreme conviction, extreme level of expertise and deep amounts of knowledge that are being shared. And I think that's where it needs to begin. What is that one thing that you are going to focus on and become 10 times better than someone else? I think someone said it, and I'm not sure. My ex-wife's father, Michael Kiley, said to me, he said he came in, and I don't know if he quoted this from somewhere else or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm attributing
his original work.
He said, Fred, the main game is the main game.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean the main game is the main game? He said, the main game, the one thing is it. That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. All the other stuff, don't get caught up in all the other bits and pieces and bifurcating your energy and focus. Your ability to laser focus and remove all distraction and completely engage, that is the key. When Steve Jobs went back to Apple, the first thing he did was cut it from 26 product lines or 23 product lines down to 6. And the same with Finder. We don't compare everything, but we do our best, and we're on our journey to do that. But you got to start somewhere, and then you continuously add to it over time.
Well, it's a little bit like Amazon, isn't it? They started with books, and they got really good at doing that before they expanded. And that quote is actually a really good one, because it's actually far more profound than what it sounds at face value. It's there's a lot to that, and I think that a lot of times, especially young entrepreneurs, or even not even young entrepreneurs, anyone who's curious and interested in the world and business, there's so many things that can take your attention. So focus is actually far harder than it sounds. To say you need to focus on one thing, it sounds really easy, and when someone says it, you go, yeah, okay, well, we'll do that. But living that is a completely different story, because it is way harder. And I know myself in my own business, it took me a lot longer time than what it should have to understand exactly that. Focus on what you do only, excluding all other things, because there's lots of things that are interesting, but I think that's really quite profound. So a couple of quick questions sort of to finish up. I've got here, who is the business person that inspires you the most, and why? Doesn't even have to be inspire. That might not be the best word, but someone that you look at what they've done and admire what they've done, or something along those lines. Someone in business.
I have many people, and these days I really have a lot of compassion for people who have been on long journeys. I love Don Valentine from Sequoia. I think he's what a pioneered VC to some extent. He backed some of the most incredible semiconductor, personal computing, really companies which probably could be felt all throughout time, and he built the ecosystem around that and funded that. I think I've been listening to Morris. I think it's Morris Chang, his name. from T T TMSC TSMC TSMC.
Oh, okay. Taiwan Semiconductors.
Yes, TSCM. And his story, wow, 53 at the age of 53 started a company from the government, and he was given $0 of equity. And then bought his own stock along the way to become, to have a $3 billion, net worth. Like I can't think of anyone with more conviction to back yourself to buy your own stock off the market and start with nothing. It's just next level, right? And to build the single most, I would say now, the cornered resource of semiconductors in the world.
In semiconductors world, yes, one of the biggest.
There's no one else who could make the chips anymore.
Yeah.
And they're just continuing to get more and more. I think this is going to be the first year where they're actually going to raise prices and not decrease prices. Because no one else can make them.
There's a big shortage, right? And all that sort of stuff. Right. Between them and maybe Intel, that's most of the market.
I don't think it even Intel now can compete. I think it's the Samsung. Obviously, this is obviously there's a whole series of other chips as well, but that just the sheer brilliance. Started from Texas Instruments. Just what a journey! What an absolute journey. I love Warren Buffett. I really love the guy. I think he's fascinating. He's inspirational. Is in a different way. I like Charlie Munger as well in his own right.
They're both brilliant.
Brilliant guys in their own journey in their way. I think Jeff Bezos is an absolute warrior, and almost I feel like to some extent I just in awe of that. I didn't even know how to process Jeff Bezos. Really, it's like such another level of humanity. I don't really resonate too much towards a guy like Elon Musk. Like I think I don't know why. It just doesn't. It's just not. Maybe I need to get more involved and understand him. I think there are always people that I sort of cling to for a long period of time. Like I watched probably 3 years of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's shareholder meetings at Berkshire Hathaway, and I know that's really awkward because you're talking 5 to 6 hours of question time. But I go in these big periods of time and really drink in large portions of people and understand them, and at the same time, but know that I'm my own self and I am unique, and so it's kind of unusual in that sense because I always go back to myself. I take reflections, but it's really my own journey. And that's what more and more these days, I just sort of go on my own journey of trying to grow and be better every day. I think I will take a good look at Benjamin Franklin. I think he's a guy which I'm interested in exploring and understanding. Charlie Munger was a big fan.
There's a great biography on Benjamin Franklin, I think, done by Walter Isaacson, the same guy that did the Jobs biography. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I think there's another. I think, obviously an industrialist, an inventor, quite a profound individual. But I'm also just trying to work on myself every day. Really, that's the person I really work hard on.
Yeah. My next question was, what the best business book you've ever read? Is there one? Now you've got your own book. You can talk about that if that's number one on the list.
Well, I tried to put as much stories and personal journeys that I've been on to try and teach in that book. And really that book is, that was really the product of that is to get you fired up and get you going, to go live. I know people, they send me messages, they tell me, they say, I've got your book next to my bedside table. This is a true story. There's a guy and he was sitting there and he looked down at the book and he was trying to make a decision whether or not to launch his business. He looked at the book and he literally said, "Nah, we're going to do it," and he just did it. And I think I get a lot of those stories, right? So it's that book is about momentum and belief and the ability to get yourself in the mindset to launch. That's what that book's about.
Okay.
I think the book, which there are a few books which are fundamental, and I haven't read it in a long time, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
I know that's probably overly quoted, but I just think it's one of those books anyone
Some good
should
stuff,
read.
right? It's one of those evergreen sort of wise books.
Win-win, begin with the end in mind. Brilliant, right?
Mhm.
How to Win Friends and Influence People was a book I read a long time ago. I haven't read it in a long time.
Still great book. These are the foundation books, right? Every person should read, right?
Right. I think Building a Business, I read The E-Myth.
Yep.
That's probably, High Output Management by Andy Grove.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a great book, pretty dry, but, a great book nonetheless. I think I do think Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, it is, Peter Thiel, if you listen to him on YouTube, is incredible. The guy is a beast in terms of his, even just vocabulary and his thought processes and the knowledge window which he explores is incredible. And that can be a little daunting, I'd say, for someone starting out, but I do think it's a good book to sprinkle in.
I reckon that's excellent. That really, that whole concept of 0 to 1 is really important. I think it's one of the best books I've probably read.
It's incredible.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
It's incredible. Then there are some things. I think a lot of people are building tech companies, and if you're building a tech company, I'd read the Phoenix Project.
Right. Okay.
Again, a relatively old stable of technologists that as a founder or a non-technologist, you read, and then it gives you the empathy of technology and engineers and what it's like to be on that other side, and what it means when you say certain things, and when what's natural to say and do, but actually you need to learn a whole different way of operating in order to be really effective. And that book taught me a lot in that sense. I think I sort of sample books depending on where I'm at, and I just sort of take a little dollop every now and then. I just open up. I'm reading Common Stocks, but Uncommon Profits, by Mr. Fisher himself. I'm into investing, Dion, I've got to say. I love it.
Yeah, right.
Which is unusual for me, right? But I'm in a big sort of bent on it. And then there'll be other times I'm into different things. I read the Everything Store. I've read, Steve Jobs' book, Rework. These are good books. I just think, the ones I'm talking about were real classics.
Yeah. Have you read, and if you haven't, I'll send it because I've got a few copies of it. There's a really simple book by a lady named Janet Lowe on Warren Buffett, and it's just called Wit and Wisdom of the World's Greatest Investor. And it just there's lots of anecdotes and stories from all of those different boardroom meetings and reports that he's put out. And it just takes the best of all of his stuff, and it makes up a great book that's super easy and quick to read, but it's just got all the best. I reckon if anyone out there sort of reads that book, they've got sort of 75% of the knowledge they need to be a much smarter investor. Have you ever read that? If you're a Buffett fan, that's like a must-have. It's not like a super serious book, but it's just awesome.
Sounds great.
I'll send it to you.
I would love that.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of copies. Every time I see it, I buy a bunch of copies to give to people because I just love it. It's just, it's brilliant. Leave that with me. Now, to finish off, do you have a favorite quote on business, leadership, or life? You might not.
I love Ted Turner, and he said, "Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise."
Yeah, right. That's a good one. Mate, what's the future hold for Finder now? You know, you've raised a pretty big chunk of money. I think it was 30 million. And that's, I imagine you've got some pretty big plans for what's next. What is that? Is that where to now?
You know, I think if anyone out there wanting to really see the cutting edge of what Finder's doing, download the Finder app and have a play around. It's where we're putting a lot of energy and a lot of investment. I think there's geographic expansion, and there's continued more and more services that we're going to offer to help people, you know, save and invest their money. That's just never going to end. You know, like, you know, it's just a continuous creation of things that people need help, and that's what we're here to do, and do that better with obviously technology as well.
And I read you guys are in 80 odd countries, got 400 plus staff. Is that right? Is that more expansion in that regards around into other countries, or I mean, 80 is a lot of countries.
Yeah, you know, we market globally through Finder.com. So people know Finder.com.au in Australia, but we market globally on Finder.com.
Yeah.
And that's a big business for us, and it's continuing to get bigger. You know, we write about and help people understand cryptocurrency all around the world, and we write in different languages, and you know, there's just a lot of, you know, work that we need to do to help and serve you know, people and help them save and invest their money.
Yeah, okay. I really appreciate your time today. That's really interesting stuff, and really appreciate the insights. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Dan.